Football! It's football! It's football season. It's halfway through May, it's nearly June, and we've actually just technically had the last game of the English football calendar. We've got about 2 weeks until the World Cup kicks off again in Brazil, and to me, 2 weeks without football is 2 weeks not worth living. So today we're going to take a look at a 3DS eShop game called Nintendo Pocket Football Club. So what is Nintendo Pocket Football Club? Well, it's pretty self-explanatory. It's pretty much as the name would suggest. It's a very stripped down and simplified version of something you might find on the PC like Football Manager. But if you've ever played a Football Manager game before, you'll know that they're really, really finicky and really time consuming. And really, to get the best out of your team, you have to spend hours and hours, setting up individual training regimes and tactics and, mentality for your players, messing around with the contracts, keeping players happy, and, just things like that. And it can get a bit overwhelming and a little bit tedious as well. So I knew this game existed, I knew it was coming out, but it wasn't really on my radar up until a couple of months ago, when it launched and I saw people talking about it on Twitter, raving about it and saying how addictive it was. And after much deliberation, I eventually took the plunge. I thought, why not? And I'm really glad I did, actually. So that's why I'm making this video, really, just to persuade anybody who might be on the fence, might not be sure on whether or not to go for it. I say do it, because this is basically, I've not been playing anything else on my 3DS since I bought it. So back in the day when I had lots of spare time, I was a Football Manager nut. I absolutely love that game. But these days I just don't have the time. Like I said, it really is a major time sink, and it's quite dangerous, actually, Football Manager. So I thought I'd pick this up because, like I said, it's quite a simplified version of Football Manager, and I thought this might, cater to that little niche. And there are two ways in which Football Manager is fundamentally different to this game. The first is that this is kind of like a football RPG, if such a thing were to exist. Not in the sense of like Inazuma 11, it's a little bit different from that. But basically you get training cards that you apply to your players to boost the stats, and that's it. It takes about 5 seconds. You look at the stats of your player that need improving, you look at the cards that you've got, and common sense dictates what needs improving, and you just apply those cards to the player to boost those stats. It's really simple, it's really intuitive, and it's actually quite fun. The second major difference is in the way that the fixtures are handled. Traditionally in the Football Manager game, like in real life, once the football season begins, that's it. Pretty much every game you play is a competitive game. You might choose to field a weaker team in like an FA Cup or a League Cup game or something like that, but every game is technically a competitive game that matters. In the Nintendo Pocket Football Club, once you start the season, every week you still have the chance to play practice matches. And this is really, really a great little addition to the genre, because it means that losing is actually fun. And not only fun, but beneficial, because by losing you get these cards, which makes your team better. So it kind of makes failure not something that is annoying, but something that's essential. It also takes away that sense of, what am I doing wrong? Because you can do these practice matches each and every week, and you can try new formations, you can try new players in different positions, you can mix up your attack versus your defense, and you can see what's working for you and when. And it doesn't matter if you lose. Whereas in Football Manager, you might want to try a new formation or a new system, but you're scared of losing the game. So it definitely eliminates that sense of frustration that kind of puts people off a more realistic, in-depth football simulator. It's definitely much more accessible than something like Football Manager. Some people might not like that. Some people might prefer the challenge of Football Manager, but for me, this is a much more enjoyable experience, and I haven't yet thrown my 3DS across the room. The way you handle transfers and new signings and contracts is also much simpler and much more streamlined. You basically get a fixed budget at the start of each season, and if you get promoted or relegated, your budget reflects that and changes accordingly. So there's no scouting system like in Football Manager. You don't have to look at all these stats and numbers and make your eyes go all dizzy. And it's not like FIFA where you have to send a scout on a mission for 3 weeks and set up his region and just, ridiculously complicated things like that. You get a list, you press X, you bring up a list of players that are available to transfer, you see the stats up front, you see the potential of the player, and you see the wage, and that's it. You can offer them a contract. If they say yes, okay, that's it. If they say no, you move on, you try to find somebody else. Easy. It's basically Football Manager without all the boring bits. I now realise I've said the words Football Manager approximately 73 times. Obviously there aren't any licensed teams here, so if that's something that affects you, then maybe bear that in mind. But really, it sounds strange, but I found myself getting more attached to my players than I would with a digital representation of a real world player, because they feel like they are your team and your players. You start at the bottom, as it were, of the football pyramid of this fictional world, and obviously the aim of the game is to get promoted successively until you get to the Division 1. But as your team grows and as you get more successful, your stadium starts to grow, you get more fans, and there really is a great sense of progression and achievement. So yeah, those were just some of the reasons why you should definitely pick up Nintendo Pocket Football Club if, like me, you're on the fence, but you are a fan of the genre, but you just don't have the time or maybe energy to sink into something like Football Manager, something a bit more full-fledged. Alright guys, that's all from me. Take it easy, and if you do want the full written review, you can always check out nintendolife.com.